The following special presentation of your Hometown Health Connection Community Conversations, Heal, Talk, Act, is presented by Buffalo Healthy Living Magazine with support from the Buffalo Federation of Neighborhood Centers, Karamia Pet Resort, Circuit Clinical, Endeavor Health Services, Medical Society of the County of Erie, the National Federation for Just Communities, People Incorporated, Community Services for Everyone, Horizon Health Services, Spectrum Health and Human Services, Best Self Behavioral Health, and WBBZ-TV.
I'm Sandy White with John Sciullo. You know, it's hard to believe that on May 14, 2022, an 18-year-old terrorist carried out a racist attack at the Jefferson Avenue Tops Market that killed 10 precious souls and injured 3 people. He wrote about his plan online beforehand, live streamed the shooting, and was proud of his belief in white supremacy.
You know, Sandy, people seemed to come from everywhere, not only in Western New York, many who had never visited that Tops before or maybe even gone to Buffalo's East Side, but they came to offer what help they could. And through all of the sadness and devastation of this tragedy and the shattered lives, the needs of so many in our underserved communities have become more evident than ever before. We also know that rather than point fingers at those who never seemed to care before, it is more important more than ever, that we come together to work toward creating positive change and developing a greater understanding of one another.
It's so important, John. It's very important at this time. And knowing how much there is to talk about, we decided to create community conversations, that long-awaited conversation. We need to talk about racism, prejudice, and why Buffalo is the 6th most segregated city in the United States. John, we need to talk about the lack of access to healthy food, health care, mental health services, and affordable housing in certain zip codes. We also need to recognize that more than 60, you believe it, 60 mass shootings took place in the same month as the shooting in Buffalo, New York. And how to put this to an end, we're going to try to start talking about what needs to be communicated. And we need to talk about what comes next in terms of healing and why we're stronger together. So we turn to our guests today for more insight and guidance.
So we have our guests on the panel tonight. Rene Pettis-Jones, President of the National Federation of Just Communities. The NFJC programs promote understanding and respect among people of all races, religions, and cultures through advocacy, conflict resolution, and education by raising community awareness, educating and empowering youth, and emerging and community leaders to become agents of change in transforming our society.
Yes.
The NFJC is dedicated to overcoming racism, bias, and discrimination by building and understanding respect and trust through education, advocacy, and community involvement. Now, in addition to her years of experience, Rene earned her degree from UB, where she focused on psychology and human services with advanced courses at UB. And then we have
Chandra Redfern. We love Chandra Redfern too. She's the CEO of Buffalo Federation of Neighborhood Centers. BFNC is a nonprofit human services agency that provides comprehensive family-focused services for adults and youth living in low-income and disadvantaged neighborhoods throughout Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and Lockport. BFNC prides itself on having an open door to all people and all communities, and as a leader in providing community-based services with a commitment to something that's so important, John, collaboration, but also innovation and excellence. Now, prior to becoming BFNC's Chief Executive Officer, Chandra was the agency's Chief Operating Officer for over 3 years, its Director of Residential Services for more than 6.5 years, and a Program Coordinator for over 5 years. She's ready and she's right in the community.
And of course, sitting next to me is Sandy White. We all remember Sandy, her award-winning news reporting and anchoring.
I've been around.
Yeah, that's a good thing. She's worked with WBBZ-TV, Channel 4. Remember her with, Rich Newberg.
Oh gosh.
Yep, and also out in Los Angeles, KNBC-TV, Channel 4, Channels 2 and 7.
I think every station in town.
Pretty much everywhere, and now WBBZ. And now Sandy is president of Mustard Seed World Consulting Group.
I'm very proud of it.
And that's a communications,
Yes,
an
it
award-winning
is.
consulting group that helps urban planning, and it's a firm dedicated to the transformation of people, neighborhoods, and cities.
This is the right show to be on.
It is, and you're also a board member, as I was at
Yes,
one
sure.
time, on the Alzheimer's Association.
That's
of Western
right.
New York.
So you know the importance of Alzheimer's awareness. So we'll be launching a new support group very soon for the east side of Buffalo to help families deal with this disease.
Yeah. So why don't we get started with our program? And Sandy, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for many years, never working with you, so this is an honor for me. So as we get started, we want to begin our questioning. And Sandy, I know you want to start with Chandra.
Absolutely. So everyone just pay close attention because you're going to get a chance to learn more about the community that you live in and the individuals that are behind the scene making the change. We hope you will stay with us. Now, Chandra, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Hi, Chandra.
Hi, Sandy.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing among the individuals who've received services from BFNC?
So we've seen a lot. Some people are understandably angry, some are sad, some are fearful, some I believe have not even begun to process. So they just are going about their day-to-day lives and they just don't know what else to do because they have to continue to live and access services and food.
How do you think they are reacting to the shooting and how are you doing?
A lot of people that we've spoken with are fearful. They feel like it's not safe to even go outside on the porch. It's not safe to go to the corner store. So that's a big concern. They don't know what they're going to do next. And I would say that I am doing okay. Oftentimes when you're in this business, you're so focused on helping other people that you don't get a time to process yourself right away.
Are you still processing it?
I am still processing.
And so am I. I mean, we're all humans and this is struck very deeply.
Yes.
How are your employees and staff responding?
Again, our employees are the community. So they are responding like the rest of the community,
Right.
except they're trying to help the best way that they can. They're trying to continue to work, but they too are dealing with anger, sadness, grief, all of those things while they continue to work.
We're trying to hold ourselves together as we talk to you about something that's so horrific that's happened in our community. And people come to me and they ask, and it's very precious. They say, well, how are you? And I don't know what to say. I basically say, how are we? Kind of make them think about it.
Yes.
How are we as a community? How are you helping others get through this?
We are listening, Sandy. We don't want to be in a position to tell people what it is they need. We want to listen to hear what people are saying they need, and we want to make sure that we're providing what is needed at the appropriate time. So for some people, they just need to access food. So we're helping them to access food. They may need a ride someplace. So we've created a fund to help with transportation.
That's great.
They may just want to talk to someone. We see that a lot with our young people. They just want to be heard and they want to talk because they do not understand.
Is that key here, just listening?
Just listening.
It's real important.
Yeah, very important. And Rene, we'll get you involved in the conversation. And Rene, I've known you for a long time. We've done a lot of work together, the NFJC, and going back with Lana Benetovich. So your work in the community is well regarded, but
Yes.
you bring the very, very unique perspective because the NFJC, which I guess used to be known by many different names, National Federation
For Just Communities.
for Just Communities.
And, yes, National Conference for Christians and Jews.
Yep.
Yes, a lot of names.
A lot of names, but through the name changes over the years, the mission has really been consistently the same, and that's to have respect among people of all races, religions, and cultures, advocacy, conflict resolution, and education. But how has the NFJC been working with everybody, and what is the need for everybody in our community to come together, and is it working?
Well, as we can see, we've got a lot more work to do. We are literally on the ground floor of this new chapter that we need to write within our community. You know, we try to bridge those divides, but we're finding that there are more divides out there than ever before. And what we need to do is to find our commonalities. We've got to get to that common ground so that we can start to talk about our differences, still respect our differences, but still appreciate how we can come together in the diversity and the beauty of our region.
I have a question, Rene. How can you talk about being more inclusive when there's so much pain? How can we do that in our language with respect to one another's religion and faith, beliefs, and lack of religious belief? That conversation, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's a tough one because what we have to do is acknowledge our differences. You know, I want to know more about you. Tell me more about your story. Tell me more about your past so that maybe you might want to ask me the very same thing. We talk a lot about the art of active listening, making sure that we're engaged in these conversations so that we're not talking just in silos by ourselves. We need to talk with groups of people so that we can hear our stories, share our stories, and find those commonalities that do exist out there.
Because there is common ground.
Common ground, and we work together, and Chandra and Rene have worked together, and other agencies. And Chandra, with that, you know, we can't talk about every need that we see because of our time here, but I think it's important to know where people are underserved, because it seems like Buffalo Federation Neighborhood Centers addresses many of the needs that all need to be discussed and individual issues. So there's housing, you know, these are things that we've learned about.
Affordable housing, the
Affordable
lack of it.
housing, food,
Yeah.
transportation, medical care.
Disparities of health.
And the change in the food desert, you know, we had heard about that. So of all of these things that we've heard about, what do you think, Chandra, is the greatest need right now among the people you serve in the city overall?
So I would say the two top needs are affordable housing, affordable in that people can afford it based on their incomes.
Because the rents are going up.
The
Mike.
rents are going up, and you know, the city has an older housing stock.
The oldest in the country, I
Yes.
understand.
So, you know, we need safe, suitable housing for individuals that they can afford, and then access to food. I mean, those are basic needs, shelter and food. And a lot of the people that we work with, they do not have those basic needs met.
I know that if someone owns their home, you know, that you're predisposed to want to make it better, and that grows the neighborhood. And I know that that's something when it comes to housing that I've heard is something very important.
It is, absolutely. Helping current homeowners keep their homes in a good condition, right? It brings not just pride to your neighborhood, but it helps the value of the home. It helps the value of the community.
Some key issues that have to be addressed as we move forward with this conversation. Rene, NFJC has a significant focus on youth as emerging community leaders. I mean, the young people will lead us into the future, but we also need to give them support. They are agents of change and they can transform our society. How do you communicate that, and how do you work with the young people to keep them inspired?
You know, one of the things that we try to do is to provide hope. What we find is that the youth feel helpless now because this was something that was outside of their control. They don't quite understand
They're probably still
why.
reeling from it.
Exactly, exactly. And they have to process, just like as adults, we have to process. And even just having conversation with our youth, we have to know how to scale our dialogue down to where they may be, because even our youngest generation now are feeling the impacts of all of this violence that they're seeing. So we've got to make sure that we're including them in this conversation. We can't shelter them from it. We can't assume that they don't hear and understand of what's going on, but we have to empower them. We've got to invest in our youth. We've got to make sure that they're our priority, because that next generation is what's going to carry us into the future.
They have to clearly understand that this is what took place was an act of evil, and that not everyone subscribes to that type of thinking. And that conversation is so important because you just can't label a large group, just like African Americans and other people of color have been labeled and stereotyped. We have to be very careful how we communicate, because there could be someone who wants to help in the community and says, I don't understand what happened to your people. And you don't want to push that person away, right?
Right. right?
How do you handle that moment?
Well, and then the vulnerability of youth, you know, when
Yes.
you are exposed to things at such a young age, and that is what you think life should be like.
Exactly.
You know, so that conversation as they become older and become more educated, that isn't, you know, violence is not the right way, or
We talk about that a lot, you know, in our programs, and it goes back many, many years. And there's a poster that still sits in our office that says, "No one is born a bigot." And if you stop to think about how are we empowering our children, what is that message that's being repeated over and over and over again? And if it's a message of hate, then that's what they're going to start carrying into their adulthood. So it's up to us to try to change that narrative, give them that message, that constant reinforcement, even as adults, of love.
and that conversation, no matter what your color, because if it's a message of hate that you learn, no matter who you are, no matter it doesn't matter.
Right.
You got to change that.
It affects all of us. And I mean, I think that we have to look in the mirror and really, you know, check ourselves out to a degree and see what more can we do, have we learned. We're going to have a little conversation about that later. But it's, you know, we've gotten these flags of about who these people supposedly are, and we're all human, we're all related.
We are, and we talk about.
We're all related, John.
We are. We're all together in this. You know. So let me ask what some of the programs that you have for youth. We talk about education programs. What are some of the hands-on, in the field?
Yeah, what are those programs?
Yeah, you know, we talk a lot about our youth and what do we want to do with them. We want to bring them into our programming in terms of youth leadership conferences. We want to bring them into programs that we're going to resurrect that we kind of thought, you know, were important, but now they really are. About our Urban Suburban Student Association, bringing rural and city youth together. That's critical now more than ever, because we need to teach them how to talk to one another, how to respect the fact that they may live in different geographic areas, but they all want to stay in a safe neighborhood. They all want to still prosper. They all want to,
It's
just
some
like we
common
do.
ground with everything. Everyone wants to
Exactly.
live the American dream and have the house
Absolutely.
and a job and affordable housing. I mean, we're not saying anything other than what we already were raised with, right?
And blessed with in a
Blessed.
free country to enjoy.
Chandra, I have a question for you regarding our young people. Can you tell us about your extensive youth services? Because I know that you're doing quite a bit in that area. And who has access to them?
So we have youth services in both Erie and Niagara counties. In Erie County, we do a comprehensive adolescent pregnancy prevention program, and that consists of evidence-based curriculum, which is done in the public school system and community centers and different places. We also have mentoring programs for both males and females. We have a peer support program, which I really love that program.
You have a lot that you're doing.
You know, the youth are busy. We try to keep them busy. We try to expose them, you know. And so basically youth ages 10 through 21 can participate in services.
How do they contact you? How do you find them?
So they can find us on the website, because we know everyone loves the web, at www.bfnc.org. And they can just click on a link and access the services, and someone will reach out to them.
Awesome.
You know, I know with youth, you go to the other side of the spectrum and you talk about seniors. And, you know, I know that the seniors, some of the community, I saw a report on Channel 7 actually, you know, a senior who was in the neighborhood who had lived there for decades and felt, you know, like safe but vulnerable, but still pretty good. But I know that there's a vulnerability in the senior community because of the fact that they're older.
As they're aging in place.
Right, and so what are you doing with the BFNC to work with seniors?
So I love the fact that Sandy said aging in place, because that is really our model, to help seniors age in place.
To live in their homes?
Live in their homes, live in their communities, because we understand that people thrive in the areas where they are comfortable and familiar. So we do have senior services that take place at the Westminster Settlement House. There's different programming. We do yoga, we do cooking classes, help people stay active. And the seniors really do love it. So there's a lot going on there.
I would think the seniors and the youth, do you ever bring them together?
We do, as a matter of fact.
I think that's kind
We
of
have intergenerational programs, and they do bingo and they do movie nights, and we're working on something where the youth can work with the seniors on computer skills and cell phone skills.
I'll need
So,
that
yes.
help.
Well, I'm not there yet. No, yeah. But you know, that caring community, that's what she's talking about.
Yes.
But both of you are talking about how do we build that caring, loving community? And we can do that with these organizations that are here with us and communicating this in media. It's
Well,
on-
and it's discussions that, you know, are occurring in Buffalo now, not only here on WBBZ and online, and it can't just be one time. This has to be something ongoing.
It has to be ongoing. I think it has to be a way of life, right?
Ah,
We have
good.
to communicate. We have to have these conversations. Sometimes they're uncomfortable, but I think that's where we can find some common ground, or just say, you know what, I don't understand. I don't understand. I'm trying to understand. I may not ever understand, but I hear you.
That's really good stuff right
Yeah.
there. And being uncomfortable is okay? Is that what
Yes.
you're saying? Because people don't want to feel uncomfortable? And they're fearful having those conversations, even if they're kids.
You have to. You have to have the conversation.
You have to build community, and this is what we're all about.
That's right. That's awesome. Renee, what do you see happening at NFJC that is helping to break down those barriers to one another's differences? Is there hope?
There is. I think we have to be more honest with each other that, you know, we've had a racist issue, a racist problem, a problem
And some people
with-
don't know what that is.
Exactly. And there's differences between being prejudiced and being racist.
So you're saying a person can be prejudiced and not racist?
Exactly. Because they're talking about their stereotypes, they're talking about their feelings, but racism is talking about those actions. There's
And
a
that's an
very big
ideology,
difference.
isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's a construct that one group is inferior to another.
Exactly.
So prejudice is a little bit different. You don't like certain ice cream.
Right.
Or you don't like
Right.
certain types of people. That's
Exactly.
different. Both have problems though.
They sure do.
Well, and I think part of the conversation that we're having here now, and part of the reason we're here, obviously, with the shooting, but sometimes it's difficult, as we talked about, to have these discussions about prejudice and racism and other. But if you don't have them, then it's left to fester.
Right.
And I think that that becomes even worse because people who are predisposed to prejudice or worse, racism or both,
Right.
we need to change that thinking in them.
Yes. We have to become comfortable with this uncomfortable.
How
And we-
does fear play a role in that, in festering?
Yes, it's fear of the unknown, and that's why we always talk about educate yourself, listen, just have these conversations about learning about other groups, people that may look different from you. Just be curious and want to know more.
What about you, Chandra? What are your thoughts on it?
I absolutely agree with Renee. And not only learning about other groups, but learning about each other. Because again, I think, Sandy, you said earlier that we can't paint a broad stroke and categorize everyone into one place. So we have to learn about each other.
Well, and I think one of the things that has been brought up, which we've heard about in news reports,
All right.
and now it's become so above the fold and it will be the headline for many, many months, is the white supremacy movement, this danger of replacement theory, these horrible, horrible mindsets. How are you embracing that? Talk about tough discussion. How are you embracing that discussion with the organization, and what should we as a community be doing to talk about it?
Yes, I think you just said that about not being afraid to talk about it. I mean, calling it out with what it is. If it's white supremacy, it's white supremacy. That's not calling someone a racist. I'm not calling you a bad person. I'm talking about the actual actions, the ideologies that you just mentioned that are out there that are being swirled, the misinformation.
Misinformation seems to be the problem too.
Yes,
It's-
it
I
is.
mean, it finds its way in fear-based thinking, right?
Absolutely. And the more you hear this misinformation, the more you start to internalize and believe it. So it's up to us to start to show the truths, the facts about each other, learn more about one another so that we can understand the real truths behind what our actions are all about.
And Chandra, when you talk about your youth, do they tend to gravitate towards social media for some of their information?
Absolutely. And you know what? And not just the youth, but the adults as well.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's something that we're going to hear more about as these conversations continue, the influence of social media and the web on all kinds of issues, not just the...
And misinformation comes, and you have to learn how to dig and research on your own. Have a conversation like we have had, John and I, and us, and with you. Find out for yourself, communicate. And who are you? We were having that communication earlier conversation about who are you really? We're all related. So that replacement theory concept is kind of interesting. We're really all related.
We are. We are all together and need each other.
We do.
We have just a few minutes before we wrap up, and we're going to continue this conversation, by the way, Sandy, with Chandra
I'd like to
and
do
Rene.
that, yes.
I guess as we wrap up this first program of 2 that we're going to do, Chandra and Rene, I'll kind of throw this out there. What if there was one word that you would need to use to speak to somebody? What would that word be to try to bring us together?
Gosh, does it have to be one word?
Could be a few words.
Okay, thank you. That's
have
an
a
easier
clock. Yours
one.
ticking now.
All right. You know, actually, I would say get to know me. How can you hate me if you get to know me? So just get to know me.
Chandra?
That's a difficult one.
Yeah.
But I think I would just say that, you know what, you matter. We care and you matter.
Very nice. All right, well, Sandy, we're out of time for part 1 of our community conversation. Thanks to our guest, Rene Pettis-Jones, President of the National Federation of Just Communities. The NFJC has opportunities for participation or contributing to their programs. You can do that at nfjcwny.org, nfjcwny.org. Chandra Redfern, thank you, CEO of the
Thank you,
Buffalo
Chandra.
Federation of Neighborhood Centers. The BFNC always needs help with donations or participation in programs. I bet you need volunteers too, Chandra. Yep. So sign up, help, and donate at bfnc.org, bfnc.org. And thank you, Sandy White. We're going to get together again
I love that.
for another important community conversation put together by our friend Annette Pinder and Buffalo Healthy Living Magazine. And it's a topic that we hope will make a difference in our hometown. So thanks for watching. We'll see you on our next edition. This special edition of your hometown Health Connection Community Conversations, Heal, Talk, Act, was presented by Buffalo Healthy Living Magazine with support from the Buffalo Federation of Neighborhood Centers, Karamia Pet Resort, Circuit Clinical, Endeavor Health Services, Medical Society of the County of Erie, the National Federation for Just Communities, People Incorporated, Community Services for Everyone, Horizon Health Services, Spectrum Health and Human Services, Best Self Behavioral Health, and WBBZ-TV.